Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our podcast, The Real Talk Unfiltered Conversation on Big Topics. I am Harsh,
I'm Nagraj.
and this is our third episode. We are super excited to have our very first guest, Venkatesh Sridhar. Here we have Venki. I want to give a brief background about Venki before he goes on and introduce himself and how his career has panned out. Venki is a experienced management professional with 20 years of experience and worked with top IT companies such as HCL, SAP, and also worked in private equity venture. Now he has transitioned into sports industry. He is currently a co-CEO of a cricket team in the Caribbean Premier League and also jointly had strategy and planning for International League T20. So Venki, why don't you go ahead and talk about how's your career unfolded in last 20 years?
Thank you very much for having me on the show. Um, I'm Venkatesh Sridhar, aka Venki. I jointly founded a company called VWin Consulting, VVIN. The second part of the V in the VVIN is my partner Weber Mehta, aka VM. We have been doing this for the past 10 years now. Makes us feel old, but that's a long time now. Yeah, when I think about it. But prior to that, I've had stints in leadership positions with both SAP, HCL, like you mentioned. Plus, I've also done work on the private equity front. And basically, in terms of when I looked at what I wanted to do in life, it was to make an impact. And I felt that I could make more impact if I would be in the sports industry. Plus, also at the time when me and VM decided to make the move into the sports industry as a full-time thing, it was a pretty blue ocean for us when we decided to take a look at it. So actually that was a strategic move, and I think we can talk more about it.
So I'm going to address you, Venki.
Yeah, it's better. Everyone calls me Venki.
SP Jain folks, that's our Venki there. Okay.
Yeah, what's up?
So, Venki, I think I've discussed this with you off camera, but I think it's very important because off late I'm seeing a lot of people who wants to kind of make a transition from kind of corporate setup into sports. In fact, I remember I had this conversation few years back, and you gave me a piece of advice which is still stays with me. So, what made you? What was the point of what was the inflection point when you decided to make a shift from, especially private equity, where I'm sure you must be going home with a lot of money, to make a transition and take a risk and get into sports, which is completely new for you?
So actually, it's an interesting question, but we have discussed this a lot privately. Maybe first time we're discussing along with Harsh publicly. But the way I look at it is, like I told you, I looked at it as purely a business opportunity, because at that point in time, why I said it was a blue ocean was, this was when me and VM started talking about it. We started talking about it in 2012, right? That was just when there was a massive shift happening in the Indian sporting business landscape. There was not just the IPL, there was just like bunch of leagues that were exploding. But what we felt was that there was a key difference between what we could bring to the table compared to what was already on the table. Because a lot of people who are managing the sports business, they predominantly came from two areas. One was either they were part of the promoter group or the group that owned it. So they were coming in purely from a business standpoint, complete business standpoint, pure business perspective, or it was basically athletes who were transitioning into a leadership position. And that's where we felt that people like me and VM, who had always had interest in the sports business, primarily from a fan's perspective, right? Not neither from a business perspective, but or from a player perspective. We just felt that provided us, because we had the tools, that we came in from a background that understood valuation, most importantly, that understood the importance of cash, and understood that it is exactly same like any other business. Because at that point in time, people were still trying to figure out how do you convert it into a proper business model, business structure, etc. So that's why we felt that was an opportunity that was ripe, and we had the privilege of actually getting into it because we got associated with the USA Cricket Association. We are helping them structure their deal and all of those things. So that gave us the right opportunity to enter. And because of that, we got in touch with Pete Russell, CEO of CPL, Caribbean Premier League, got involved with CPL, right? And now, as you know, we both are the co-CEOs of St. Kitts and Nevis Patriots. So it was, in essence, basically, we saw an opportunity, we went after it, and then neither me nor VM ever knew that where the journey would take us, but it was a risk that we took. And so far, knock on the wood, working well.
Fantastic. So I think the follow on is this, right? And as you rightly mentioned that you've been a fan, not necessarily. I recall that you have played any kind of professional sport, right? What are the challenges or barriers? To an extent, even I would call it as has there been an element of self doubt? Why would anyone would want to listen to you and your partner when they know you don't have any professional background having played the sport or managed the sport from the business side of it? What challenges were there, and was it a walk in the park, or you did have to cross certain barriers, and how did you equip yourself?
No, actually, you have in any organization, regardless of whether it's sports or anywhere else, you have to prove your capability, right? I mean, even if you shift, like say for example, right now you're transitioning from a long-term role into another role, you have to again come and prove in the organization. That's, I mean, the way you can put it in any other way, but the bare bone structure is that you got to prove at every organization that you're being a part of. And I felt that we were quite lucky in that sense that it was a game that we loved. So we had a passion for cricket. So we could understand the nuances of the game. So as you know, actually in India, even a Panwala has an opinion on how Sachin Tendulkar should play a shot, right? But and I use the example of Sachin Tendulkar because Sachin Tendulkar has gone on record and even spoken about the person who came to his room in Taj in Chennai and told him that how your elbow thing is being affected, and that tells you like if the person who's called as the god of cricket can listen to somebody who does not play the game but has a point that is actually good, they will take it. So I do feel that yes, there are certain times players will say, oh, you have not played the game at the highest level, so how can you say that? But I have till now, and I don't know whether it is because of the way we are with them or whatever, but we are quite fortunate. I've never had anybody tell that. Like I still remember, uh, when we were with the St. Lucia team, and at that time Darren Sammy was the captain, and we said we wanted to pick Rakim Cornwall. And if anybody Googles Rakim Cornwall, they'll see that a lot of people would not go for him primarily because of the way he looks and the way his weight is an issue, right? And it would have been very easy for the two-time World Cup winning champion to just turn around and say, you guys don't know anything about it. But the most interesting thing was he asked both of us, why do you want him? What is running in your mind? And then he explained our logic behind it. I still remember, he just said one thing. He's like, well, if he doesn't field well, trust me, I'm going to like make him run all over the ground. So we said, yeah, that's on to you. That's fine. So I think as long as you understand that you're not stepping over anybody's toes, right? It is like you come from a consulting background. Obviously, like when you go into any organization, the people inside the organization know better about the organization than you.
Absolutely.
So it is something similar to that.
Okay.
So I've
How
never
did you
felt that.
get access to the CEO of CPL?
Oh yeah. So
Because see, one thing in every industry, right? Whether it is from Bollywood or sport or consulting, right? I think it's referral and getting access is the most difficult step.
right.
So, I mean, how did that happen?
So basically, how me and Pete got in touch was essentially because there was somebody who wanted to buy a team in CPL, and that's how we reached out to Pete. And then from there, we formed a relationship, and we have a good relationship with him.
Fantastic. So, if I'm ever going to buy a team, then I'll talk to you.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I'll put you in touch with Pete.
And you're talking about this opportunity, but definitely, as you transitioned out, you would have to handle a lot of uncertainty in this. Yeah. How are you able to do that? Like, because you come from a structured environment and suddenly jumping into a blue ocean, definitely there will be a lot of risk which would have come up.
I think one important thing that both me and VM agreed on, the first thing that me and VM agreed on is that the year 2014, the entire year, we said would be a year of learning, right? Because the way I look at it, I mean, it might sound a bit philosophical, but the way I look at it is that if I am in my head prepared for the fact that I cannot control anything, I'm relaxed. Yeah. But the moment I come in with an attitude that, oh, I can control everything, and even one thing doesn't go well, I've lost it. So basically, I can create my own heaven or I can create my own hell, right? So we just decided that we'll create our own heaven In our head, we were like, we are not going to earn a single rupee, dirham, dollar, whatever you want to call it, through entirety of 2014, and we have to sustain ourselves. So we were clear on that. The business plan said 12 months, zero. So we were very clear on that. So I think it helped. Plus, I also feel that it helps when there are two people in this, because you can bounce things off each other. One person is feeling low, the other can pep the other one up. So it works. I mean, now I can always say that, it's all like sounds honky dory and all of that. But the thing was, we did go through periods where there was doubt, like what we are doing, whether, because like you rightly mentioned, is like, will people listen to us? Why should people listen to us? So the entirety of 2014 was spent figuring out those questions.
Uh, Listening about you and VM, it kind of remind me in Nagraj, where we kind of, he keep prepping me up for when a difficult situation comes in. But did you also have any backup plan, let's say if things wouldn't have worked out in 2014? And next follow-up is, how did your year actually went, the 2014?
It went exactly according to plan. We earned nothing, so so we were happy about it. But on a serious note, though, but basically, there was no alternative. We didn't think of an alternative, primarily because the fact was, like he mentioned, getting into sports is a very difficult thing. Breaking into it is, because it's a very small circle. The industry is big. The industry makes enormous amount of money, but the thing is that it is very difficult to get into it, because it's still a lot of, like you said, through referrals, through network, and so on and so forth. But once you are in that ecosystem, you will slowly start inching your way forward. So our entire thing was basically, bring, or if I use a NFL analogy, basically like take every single yard every single time, just keep moving forward, just keep moving forward. That was the goal.
I do not know about you, but I have no idea what is NFL. Can you explain to me?
The National Football League, which is the American version of football, in
Okay.
which they don't use the foot to play with the ball, but it's still called football.
Football, yeah.
Fantastic. Okay. Look, see, as I said, right, off late, I've seen a lot of interest, especially from youngsters, with couple of years of experience or just out of the college. Just the magnitude of the fame and the money and so on and so forth, at least the way they perceive it, a lot of them are showing interest to transition to sports. And when I say transition to sports, in some form or other, they want to be associated with sports. At the same time, they also want to have the fame of rubbing shoulders with stars of the sports and who's of sports management. Also, to be able to make kind of a money which they can traditionally make from a corporate setup. So, two questions, right? Given this context, what is your recommendation? First of all, is it actually good to consider transition into sports from corporate, irrespective of number of years of experience they've got in corporate? Two, is it real that in sports, depending on the role they play, they make a lot of money? Now, I know that Venki works only for 6 months a year. Okay.
That's what you think, but yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. So let me put it this way. He
6
works
months of physical work.
Yeah, 6 months of physical work.
Yeah.
And he is able to sustain for a year. And I have worked for large consulting firm, but I still have to work for 12 months. So is it real? Sports has a lot of money?
It depends on the role that you're playing. In any industry, you will have a wide range of, like what salary you earn and all of that. But what I would recommend to youngsters who want to get into this, right? Get in early, right? If you're in the early part of your career, get in early, because, like I said, the first few years will not be easy, right? So even though it's a very glamorous world from the outside, it is a lot of hard work. Like you have been to some of our games, you know how difficult it is during the game, right? And that, trust me, is our least busy period when the games are on, because then the attention is shifted to cricket. But what happens is, in the lead up to that, there are so many challenges that you have and the problems that you solve, because essentially any role in sports is essentially a problem solving role, right? Regardless of the role or the title that you carry, you have to solve a problem. You're there to solve a problem, because most sporting entities would hire a higher number of people for a very specific period. You won't be there throughout the year, right? So because of that, so when you come in, you have, it is high impact. You got to come in, you got to make an impact. So you should come in to solve the problem because you're hired for that. Like if you hire somebody who's good at digital marketing, you want them to come in and immediately make impact and so on and so forth. I'm just taking that as an example. But what happens is, I feel that today, the older that you get into a role, the older you are addicted to the opium called salary. And then once you're addicted to the opium called
This
salary,
is for you guys, huh?
once you got addicted to the opium called salary, it is then very difficult to get away from the comfort zone.
Okay. Just, before you ask questions, right? I mean, I'm just curious that in the sports ecosystem, you just gave an example as digital marketing, right? What are the other, I know there may be plethora of roles, but if you have to pick like top 5 or 6 roles to be associated with sports, high impact but high visibility, what are those roles would be? One. Point number two is, how many such institutions are there in India or abroad where people can actually, after completing their 12th standard or whatever is an equivalent to 12th in other parts of the world, to study specifically for sports management, sports administration?
So I'll answer the last question first. So the most famous MBA program with an emphasis on sports is at Ohio University. And there are a lot of stuff. I think plus there is also an Institute of Sports Management. I may not be saying the name right, but
In Switzerland,
no, in India.
in
There
India
is
as
there
well.
is.
Okay.
So I think it's in Bombay. So they have or Mumbai. Should just be politically correct, but so, and they are, like lot of institutions now looking at sports as a, because see, this isn't, if you look at it from a more, like, let's move to 30,000 feet sort of view. uh, every industry is going to be affected by AI, right? In a sort of way, like for example, a coder could probably be replaced by AI, right? You get
You
no
can
code
generate
and
code
stuff
in
like that,
there.
yeah, right? But the in sports, AI's impact would not be something that would take away jobs. The reason why I say that is, there is no fun in seeing a robot play another robot in a football game. You want to see humans doing superhuman things, right? Sachin Tendulkar Desert Storm is special because out of nowhere this guy did it. A Glenn Maxwell innings against Afghanistan is special because if a robot doing it, first of all, the robot wouldn't have got injured in the first place, right? And you look at all of those examples, the sports is the only business where the amount of people required will not change that dramatically from an employment perspective. So if you're looking at it as a future, sports is an industry that can stay for a long time, right? But will AI make impacts on sports? Yes, and we can talk about it subsequently, but it's not germane to this conversation. But what I feel is that if you want to learn from, or if you already, like, say for example, finished your MBA or something like that, Harvard as a program, which is a short term program that focuses on sports, right? And so you could go and look at those opportunities, and they do exist, and they are a fun place to network too. Now coming to the first
A
part of your
different, yeah,
question,
yeah.
the variety of roles that are high impact and high visibility would obviously be marketing, right? Then there is something which is specific to cricket that I'll talk about, is something called a match control team, where you are in essence, it's a sort of a role where you're in between the teams and the umpires or the match officials, right? You are the guys who are ensuring the players are coming off in onto the field in time, those sort of things, that where you are helping the umpires control the match, which is why they call the match control team. So these are areas which are high impact, because if you make a mistake, the mistake costs a lot of money, because nowadays matches are about broadcast, and if a match gets pulled off, then there are like other financial implications, etc. So that's a very high impact, high visibility. Maybe not many people have heard about that role. Marketing, everyone knows. Then you look at another high impact, high visibility role that I think would be is in the player recruitment area. Again, you don't need to be a big player to be that. You can be a good scout, right? Like analytics is another area, right? even though I have a very nuanced opinion about analytics in cricket, only specific to cricket, but I do feel that that's an high impact role, right? And today there are a lot of courses that teach you analytics, right? Then I think another area that not many people take up, but that I feel is the best way to go forward, and one of the best examples is Simon Toffel. What you can do using umpiring. I think umpiring is a massive opportunity that a lot of people take it for granted or don't deem it that important.
I mean,
Sorry, I'm quite. So last two courses, by the way, he told I've done both, umpiring and analytics, and we've had a different conversation around that. Yeah, go ahead,
yeah.
Harsh.
I think we're talking about roles, and I know that you come from M&A background. I come from M&A background. You were part of PE Ventures. So, had you got a chance to work on some, deals, or being part of something where it was related to sports? And
No. I think private equity into sports has come much later. So if you look at globally now, the acceptance of private equity in sports has increased. I think the last league that was holding out against private equity was the NFL, which is the largest league in the world, beats even the English Premier League, etc. And even now they are warming up to private equity because eventually, if you look at the valuation of the sports teams, right? I think in the end it will just be private equity that'll be able to own it. Major private equity deal that is public information right now is the one of CVC Capital and Torrent Pharma, for the Gujarat team in IPL.
IPL, correct. Now, as we have covered your career and about the sports industry, I think we want to move to the cricket, the economics behind how it runs, the cricket leagues, right? So we want to understand like what are the various revenue streams when it comes to international T20 cricket leagues, and how do teams and organizers make money?
Yeah. So regardless of sport, the revenues lines in sport predominantly remain the same. The biggest one being media rights, and when I say media rights, it includes television, radio, OTT, because streaming is now a massive format, and that is one major revenue stream that is across any sport that you take. Like today, you decide that you want to do like even something like UFC. Majority of their money comes from media rights. The second is obviously sponsorship.
Sorry, Venki, if you have to put a percentage of.
I would say 30 to 50%, depending on the maturity of the league. Right, 30 to 50% is a very reasonable number to take a look at, right? Because then you follow it up with the central sponsorship. So there are two tiers to sponsorship. One is central. When I say central, it means more league sponsorship, league level sponsorship, like a title sponsor. The sponsorship around the entire tournament that is done by the organizer, right? And then of course you come to team sponsorship, which is on jerseys and stuff like that. Now these two components will be the highest, like they put together would give you 80% to 90% of the revenue in effect. Then you obviously have your ticketing, depending on where you are. I mean, which sport you're talking about, which country you're talking about. Ticketing is a major revenue source, depending on that.
So when you say media rights, how does it work? So the organizer and the teams will have a share of it, or
Yes.
generally the organizers take a larger cut because obviously they.
Well,
It is
depends.
all negotiated. How does it?
So it depends on from a league to league perspective. Say for example, like the EPL is equally divided amongst all the teams. If you take a look at IPL, right? IPL looks at with the majority going to BCCI and the remaining being shared by
So EPL, it is including league and teams together, it gets equally divided, is it?
Yeah. So every team makes the same amount of money. So the amount that gets split is divided by 20 teams equally. Because the structure of the league is different, right? Because the 20 teams that form part of the English Premier League are essentially like shareholders of the thing. Not necessarily on paper, but in essence they are like that. So that's how they're changed. If you look at the NFL model is exactly the same. Each NFL team is essentially a shareholder of the NFL.
But when it comes to IPL, it's
The IPL is 100% owned by the BCCI, so that's a different model. That's why I said depending on which country you're, the model changes.
But the central sponsorship and the media rights revenue, it's again some
it is
percentages.
split between BCCI, and it will be split amongst the teams.
Equally.
Yeah, the
The rest of the part equally.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
But this interesting part which want to understand is because every team has a different fan base, right? Some have higher fan base, right? And there will be viewing will be much more in the in those matches, right? So that kind of not determined because you said equally it gets distributed.
So in IPL, no. But if you look at, it's interesting you brought this point out, because in the US market, this plays a role, where in the US market, they have what is called as a centralized and then what is called as your market, which they define as your territory. So for example, if you are the owner of Philadelphia Eagles, you'll be given Pennsylvania, the portion that Pittsburgh Steelers are not taking part of. So the Pittsburgh Steelers will have obviously the city of Pittsburgh and the area around it, right? Whereas you will have Philadelphia and the area around it as your local media market. But in India, we don't have such a fragmented media market. So which is why it becomes very difficult for you to put a, like, we can always say MI CSK match is a premium match, right? But because we don't have a clear pay-per-view model or any such model where you have to pay extra to watch that game, that doesn't work.
Is it true? A lot of times, team picks a particular talent or a icon player just to increase the brand value and getting a much better sponsorship more than considering the performance of the player.
I would doubt that, because if you ask me, right, everyone wants to win. So, this is obviously a sort of like one of those things where they say, oh, they just retain this player for the brand value. The point is, if you are, you have to be very lucky to have a fan base that stands by you even if you're losing, right? It's very difficult to have a fan base like that, right? Only
Yeah,
one.
but we know.
RCB has it.
Yeah, only one.
That's what I was
That's
saying.
what I was going to say. Only one team in IPL has it, because it's very difficult to, like for example,
There's another team. I mean, another team which probably didn't play 1 or 2 seasons for whatever various challenges,
man,
and they still have.
that fan base still has so many titles to talk about.
Yeah.
This fan base has nothing to talk about, right? So the pain of being, it's like, I would give a Premier League example. Like if you look at it, there was an era where Chelsea was like winning any other thing. But right now, being a Chelsea fan is difficult because we don't win anything right now, right? So that way, it's very difficult to be a fan when when
Everyone
you're
wants to associate themselves with a winning horse.
no, with the winning horse, then you get to boast amongst your friend circle and sort of that. There's a lot of like psychological reasons behind why you
Bargaining
want
rights.
to. Yeah. So bragging rights is important part of it. But like the fan base is a critical component. But I don't think that the fan base is, because then what happens is, like, it is like, let's take the example of Cristiano Ronaldo, right? It's like saying that just because Ronaldo's moved to the Saudi League, right, all of his fans have shifted away from Real Madrid or shifted away from Manchester United and have started following his team. I don't think that's the case.
It's a good point. It's a good point. Just one other question I have in this is, with so many leagues, I'm not only talking about cricket. There's a kabaddi league, there is a badminton league, so many leagues, cropping up, and by geography, don't we think, again, it's a demand and supply, right? I mean, there are way too many supply right now in terms of number of sports and league by geography. Wouldn't that diminish in terms of the a dollar value coming into that particular league? What's your view?
Actually, that's a fantastic question. So when I think about it, like, I'll take Pro Kabaddi League as an example, right? The Pro Kabaddi League got enormous support from Star as a network, right? Like, when they made it so popular, it was essentially like, they shut down their most profitable sites, which was the, GEC, the Star Hindi and all of those networks, and where they used to show PKL to get the audience to love it. But the impact it did was phenomenal. Like, after a long time, I was seeing kids play kabaddi. But obviously now the kids are talking about, doing the thigh fight thing and all of that after winning the point. So they made the sport very exciting for the fan to watch, right? Like, an example I could give you, probably growing up, all of us watched WWE, right? But now if we switch on to WWE, we don't have that connect anymore, because none of the wrestlers that we grew up with, they're all retired and stuff like that, right? But that is an organization that I look at and I really admire, because they create new fans every year, And if you look at it, the same thing, has WWE gone through phases where, its viewership dipped, where it had a ratings issue and all of that, but they came back. So I think it's a cycle. It's just, and entertainment is like, if you have too much of something, then you want something different. So like, perfect analogy would be like, how in movies you would see that if a romantic movie made, like a lot of money, then you would see a slate of romantic movies come in, and then somebody would come in with a thriller, and then suddenly thriller is the genre to do, or a comedy horror is now the most money minting genre, right? Now everyone wants to jump on it.
I think this WWE is also a great example. I still remember while growing up, we used to also have this trump cards. I mean, I remember Lex Luger, Hulk Hogan, and we used to play. It just gave me an idea because I just came back from Global Chess League, and they had kind of created a caricature of different chess players, and their idea is to give it to kids or fans who come and watch, and ask the players to sign on their caricature. Because a lot of time what happens is people go take an autograph, 2 months down the line they have no clue whose autograph they've taken. Okay, and then as a follow-up I told, why don't we create a trump card equivalent for chess in terms of rating, openings, and so on and so forth. Anyway, that's
And you could even make it into an NFT,
yeah,
right? And then that's something that works.
Absolutely.
Where people can then have proof that it has been signed by such and such person. And plus, what you could also do is you'll obviously have the the data get updated, the stats get updated, so on and so forth. So it could be like, till the date of signing, this is what he had performed, until post that.
it's fantastic. It's interesting space to explore.
And especially, Global Chess League is sponsored by an IT company or owned by an IT company.
That's right.
Again, moving back to our economics, what we were discussing, I think we've discussed the revenue model. I want to also talk about the various costs which are involved in running this league. From player contracts to managing the venue, managing the support staff. Like what kind of costs are there when you are managing these leagues?
Right. So I'll split this into two. The cost of production of the event is very different for a league than the cost that happen for the team. So start from the team level, of the one that you touched upon, the player cost. So their salaries, then their stay, their per diems, their air tickets. Then you have your support staff, which is your coach, your team manager, so on and so forth. Their salaries, their cost of travel, travel TLB, as we call it, right? TLB, and then per diems and stuff like that. So that is a major cost that will take away, that would be usually close to about 40 to 50% of what your revenues are in general. I'm not talking from a IPL perspective, I'm just giving you a global. Or in the case of a EPL, it can even be 80%. So across the leagues it differs depending on what the sport is. Or in the case of rugby, for example, that will be very low, right? That will be more in the 30-40% range. So apart from that, then you have your other staff around you. You'll have the CEO of the company, you'll have a head of marketing, you'll have sponsorship, you'll have all those things, and you have like your general, your SG&A, as we would call it. Your SG&A costs are there, and then your other cost is renting the stadium, right? And then you have match day cost, which is basically you have the cost of hospitality, which is providing food, alcohol. Then you have the cost of security. Then you have the cost of like you have a lot of other miscellaneous stuff, like having an ambulance in place or things like that, and they all add up. The cost of another major cost is your cost of having a generator for the lights.
Do the players get paid upfront before?
No, there is a proper payment plan.
And I mean, I recently came across the news from IPL perspective, but broadly across other leagues, if a player is part of the squad but not necessarily they play any games, do they still get paid for the auction amount they've taken, whether they play or not
so
play?
the term that we use in cricket specifically is available for selection.
Okay.
So the term available for selection basically means that you're physically present, you're physically healthy, and you're cleared by the physio to play if you're coming back from injury or whatever. So you are available for selection on that day or for that match, and you were not selected, It's not on you.
But instances like, for example, I think Jofra Archer was picked by Mumbai Indians, but he didn't play the first season, right?
Yeah, so he was not available for selection, so doesn't get paid.
So second question I have is, as a part of the contract, do the players actually get some part of payment out of the prize money? Let's say Kolkata Knight Riders won the season and there will be a prize money. Do they also get a share of that? That's
Yeah,
only for the
yeah,
owners.
yeah.
They get.
They do. So it depends on, like, for
How
example,
they have.
yeah. I have not seen the latest IPL contract, so I can't comment on it. But CPL, I'm fully aware of. In CPL, 100% of it is with the players, the prize money, and then on top of it, teams add, if like you give a bonus or something like that for the team winning. So when we won in 2021, we paid the players 1.5 times. So basically, 50% was.
And this man of the match, man of the series, and all comes from a central pool, or it comes from the central pool. It's from the league.
No, not it's a cost to the league. It's not.
It's a cost to the league, not to the teams. Okay.
Now, looking things from an investing perspective, generally, what is the typical time frame? As an investor would look to recoup his investment, and what are some of the factors which can influence this?
Okay, that's a very good question. So that in sports, that differs dramatically. So, are you like a private equity like CVC where you have a specific exit point in mind and you want to exit at an X valuation and you leave because you have made money for your fund, right? That is one way of looking at it. Or like, the owner of the team that I and VM are co-CEOs of, he was very clear. His perspective was he wanted to use cricket because obviously he was passionate about cricket, etc. But he wanted to use that as a way to segue into businesses in the Caribbean, which he's doing. So that was his major goal. So so what the way you look at it is different. If you purely look at it financially, right, you would find that you will struggle to make a pure financial business case out of most of this, except for maybe the IPL team, because the IPL teams have a great media rights deal, right? And also, BC has done a good job of maintaining the costs, and so that way it has worked out well for the teams.
So, see, if you say it doesn't make financially sense,
Like, it's not a pure financial.
exactly. So either you get your valuation high and you exit, but you're saying the revenue which you're going to make in next few years, let's say 4-5 years, it's not going to be enough for you to recoup the investment.
Yeah, because the way I look at it is, you don't want to recoup your investment. You want to make an ROI on it, right? Because if you have recouped your investment 5 years, you have lost money in essence, because time value of money, right? So if you look at it from that perspective, it's a massive struggle. And if you look at it, there have rarely been very successful exits in, say, EPL or things like that. It's very, very difficult for you to have that. But now what has happened is now even the owners have become smarter. I don't know if you have heard about the deal that Mark Cuban did for the Dallas Mavericks in the NBA, where he retains the basketball decision-making control, but he has exited his stake, substantial amount of it, right? So actually, if you look at it, there is so much of creative deal making that you could do inside of sports that is probably not possible in other businesses, right? So that's why I know it's not a very clear answer, but the answer is a bit complicated, unfortunately, because as an investor, what are you looking at? Based on that, my answer would change.
See, because for me, that's what, if the team, being a owner of a team, is actually not making money through the existing revenue stream and you're not able to keep the cost control to make some profit, how does valuation dramatically increase? Finally, cash, right? I mean, whether you're making money or not making money.
The opportunity is limited, no, Nags. Opportunity is absolutely limited. Like, for example, if you look at it, there are only going to be 10 IPL teams.
Correct.
So you are going to be part of a very exclusive club. It is like saying, why should I go to a 150-year-old club in India and wait 15 years?
So you want to be part of it, then you will have to buy it. That means the team owners have got the power to.
Yeah, and it's a very rare asset throughout the world,
So again,
how many sports leagues are there and how many sports teams are available.
So make it like
for
a demand and supply. No, again, it's okay.
So it's a very rare item, as I would say. So it's a trophy collection too in your asset.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we spoke a lot about money. Let's also speak about risk in not making the money, right? I mean, what are the financial risks associated with these kind of a sports and leagues from two sides, right? One is being a part of a league, and the other one is being a part of the owning a team,
Yeah.
because you have kind of playing a part in both sides, and especially during situation like pandemic when COVID happened, or even if COVID does not happen. I know the ICC T20 Women's World Cup had to be shifted from Bangladesh.
Yeah.
I mean, these kind of a risk, how it gets managed, and what are the implication on the financial aspect, and how do we go about from there?
Okay. So a league has a very different sort of risk, and the teams have different sorts of risk, right? The league has the risk where, your relationship with the broadcaster breaks down, or the relationship with the franchisees break down. And there are instances of that happening because there are plenty of teams across various leagues. Like for example, uh, if you talk about something like Portsmouth in the football industry, was owned by a UAE business group here, and was forcibly sent into bankruptcy, right? And or Chelsea, for example, such a big massive club, because of the Russia Ukraine sort of a thing, they just said Roman is no longer welcome as a owner, right? And there was a forced sale that has happened. So as a league, you have to manage those sort of situations where that happens. uh, and plus, as a league, I think as you get more established, your risks go down, right? It's more like the house eventually always wins, right? So they do get to that stage once the league becomes more mature and so on, which is what we have seen even with CPL. CPL also had times when it had to make few teams go out and have to sell them and all of that.
So how many seasons now? 14 or 15 seasons done?
From 2014 to 2013, right? So 11, 12 seasons, right? I may not be exactly the same numbers, but 11th or the 12th season, this could be. So then, from a team's perspective, obviously you're not getting sponsors, or, you're not lucky to be RCB. So if the results don't go your way, your valuation of sponsorship numbers comes down, right?
ಈ ಸಲ ಕಪ್ ನಮ್ಮದೇ.
Well, you can say that every year.
Okay.
I'm not saying you won't win it or whatever, but it's because I have tremendous respect for Andy Flower as a coach, and I'm sure given
Yeah, I think
given a
they
chance-
came back from
Yeah, I mean,
literally,
it's amazing, right? And from a team's perspective, if you look at it from a business side of things, then you look at sponsorship, then you look at people not showing up to your games, right? Like, like people protesting against you that you will not come and watch the games or whatever, which has happened to a lot of. Luckily,
but
in
the
cricket,
gate receipts are comparatively.
yeah, gate races are comparatively low, but at least the gate races go towards funding your stadium costs. So look at it that way. You don't have to look at it as a revenue center, but it just funds your cost center. So
Yeah, it's just one follow-on question out of my personal interest, right? When these kind of tournaments happen, whether it's IPL, ILT20, Women's World Cup, Men's World Cup, how do people? How do businesses like restaurants and hotel business? I mean, restaurants business specifically, get to be a part of that? Is there a tendering process? Is it go through RFP? What are the business models there?
okay, so that's actually depends on the business. So in terms of whether it's a organization that is the governing body that does it, then there would be obviously a lot of like a tendering process or RFP process, stuff like that. When it is more private, it's more up to, like, for example, in most of the leagues, right, when the venue is yours, you are basically deciding that as a team, right? So it may not be a decision of the league, then league doesn't get involved. The league will only say that the hospitality should be of this standard, etc. They will not quote any brand or whatever, but they'll say that you got to be of an international standard, blah blah blah, so on and so forth. And actually, we were talking about the pandemic, right? So, I have actually a very funny story to say about the pandemic. So, 2020, the pandemic was raging, and that's when CPL decided to still hold the CPL in 2020, but do it in a bubble environment, closed environment, with even this ground is closed to spectators too, right? And only essential people who are going to be running it to be part of it. everyone housed in Trinidad inside the hotel and so on and so forth, right? So in terms of, so at that time our coach was Simon Helmet, right? So he was flying in from Australia. He calls me, right, and I'm on my way to New York. So he calls me and then he goes, Venki, I have bad news for you. I said, what's that, coach? What's up? He's like, I tested positive. So I was like, hold on a sec, do you have any symptoms? And he had no symptoms. So I said, coach, just for safety's sake, why don't you go and take a test again? So he said, no, Venki, I don't know if they will allow me to take a test. And I said, no, why don't you just go and ask? And till date, I still kid with Simon Helmet that you hold the record for the person who has recovered from COVID the fastest, because he did a test the next day and he turned out to be negative, right? But then, in that time period, but CPL did not allow us to let Simon travel because he had to do one more test to prove himself this and then come. So it would have just become, so in matter of like 6 hours, I had to go find another head coach, right, for that temporary period. So, so the challenges were there, and which was unique because you never have to change a head coach in six hours essentially.
And you had to pay a premium?
No, fortunately, no.
Okay.
But the thing is that, it is still an hassle, right? Then, you have to like get, get him. So luckily for us, Mark O'Donnell was coming from New Zealand. New Zealand had not taken that strict a measure like Australia had done. So we could still fly him out. But, so those were those sort of things. And then, it was funny that me and VM and Mahesh, who's our owner, we were told that you could come in to St. Lucia and from there you could come into Trinidad. We land in St. Lucia, we check in, and the first thing that we see on TV is that Trinidad has shut down its airspace. So we were stuck in St. Lucia, and and we had
The team was there. Team was in
team was in
Trinidad.
Trinidad, and we had to like sit down, have chats, and do all of those things remotely sitting in St. Lucia. Though I didn't mind because St. Lucia was a much better place to be in at that time because the restrictions, because we are not part of the CPL bubble, right? So I could move around the resort, I could be in the pool, I could do all of those things, and unfortunately the players could not even get out of their rooms, because of the strict COVID stuff and all that. So the pandemic was challenging and unique, and I'm sure that for somebody who would have worked in the subsequent edition of IPL, just 2021, they would have had massive shifts because half of it was done in India, then half of it had to be moved to UAE. So I think that's where sports is unique, right? It throws you unique challenges, and you have to fix, like I said, essentially fix problems, because you will be thrown problems, right? And I think little bit of chaos always leads to something good.
Fantastic.
I think, Venki, it's been an interesting conversation with you. As we're wrapping, I think I have last question for you.
Mm-hmm.
And you've talked about the revenue streams and mostly the traditional revenue streams such as broadcasting rights and the media rights. What do you think are some of the innovative revenue streams which these leagues and the teams can explore?
I think apart from the typical licensing deals that you can do for video games and stuff like that, the Web3 gives you a lot of opportunity. I mean, I understand now the NFT craze is gone. Yeah. But of course, I still feel that there are innovative ways using blockchain, AI, or Web3 as a technology. Like one of the things is, say, for example, this is something that I've been thinking about. I don't know whether it is possible or not. Somewhere in the future, I could give you a virtual seat, right? Which is basically, I'm giving you a virtual seat, which is your own seat, dedicated, etc. And from a VR perspective, you are basically watching the match from the stadium. And if you're having a headset on, I can pipe you the live audio from the stadium back to you, right? That will transform the viewer experience, because right now, if you look at it as if you ask me, and I always say this, as a joke, but it's that I only want to watch matches at the stadium if I'm being paid to watch, and I'm paid as part of the whole thing, because the experience of as a fan at the stadium, as a cricket fan, I'm talking about, very limited to cricket, is not as easy or as convenient for me as it is when I'm at home, because primarily because the kind of stadiums that exist in India, they cater to a large population, right? I mean, and we are crazy for the game, right? So even if you build tomorrow a 2 lakh stadium, cricket stadium, it will be full for an India game. It will be full for the IPL game, right? So then obviously you can't build the other infrastructure like toilets and all those things to cater to that. It just is not possible. I mean, we might say whatever, but it's not feasible. So the convenience of watching at home is there, but the only thing that I'm missing is the atmosphere, right? And there are so many who want to be at that place. Like say Nags want to be at an RCB game, right? But he can't leave Dubai and go. But I can give to him the same experience in Dubai as if he is sitting in RCB, right? He's sitting right there at the stadium, for an RCB game, and that to me should be the way where that will change.
Correct. I mean, obviously, that will enhance your experience. You're getting a close view, but also you're getting that experience
Yeah,
and
plus,
convenience.
plus someone who is sitting next to me could also be someone virtual. Doesn't have to be the real person, right? But so that will change the way that I perceive the game as a fan. I see the game as a fan. Plus, what's happening is, like the analytics that get fed into me as a fan. Things that I want. And obviously now you can see, like, in India itself, like for example, now if you are a fan of RCB, you want to listen to commentary in Kannada, you can change the audio, listen to it in Kannada, right? But I know, because I'm part of a league, that it there is a massive incremental cost to production because you're adding every other language, right? Because I can't have just one person speak the language. You need to have plethora, so then you are having additional costs, etc., right? That can be, once AI gets to that level where AI can commentate on that, right?
Yeah. You can keep the cost minimal. Yeah.
You can minimize your cost, and you can have that. You can obviously have an experienced voice, like a player was played, like say for example, like if Rahul Dravid is giving a commentary in Kannada, right?
You relate it better. You like it better.
No, I
Yeah.
mean, it is that I would want to listen to Rahul Dravid, but I do not want to listen to somebody doing the commentary just because they know the language, right? So, so it could be essentially that AI could play that role of the commentator who's not a experienced player coming into a commentary role, right? So those are things that I see definitely, and that will change the dynamics also, right? Because then you add, say for example, you are, like think of it from a player perspective. You don't want to travel the world doing commentary, but you want to lend the voice, and you get paid for it. So, so much things happening. I don't know how much of it is possible, or how much of it is already being thought of by the production companies who do the production, right? But this will definitely change the way that you do it. There are now technologies where, like for example, you look at Hawkeye, right? Um, and you look at the LBW decisions, so on and so forth, with the DRS, etc., right? Which we try to do actually in ILT20. I mean, we have tried to do a lot of crazy stuff in ILT20, but the thing was, one of the things is we wanted to have, there was a smart ball that we use which had a chip inside of it. But what I really felt would be really beneficial of having a chip inside the ball would be, then if you can get precise tracking, then we don't have to worry about this, the umpire's decision stands, the umpire's call controversy would end, because then, now it's not somebody guesstimating where the ball pitched. Now you will actually have data of because obviously
The
the chip is
trajectory
going
of,
through, bouncing, you have RPM, you have everything, so you could calculate it far more precisely, which is what you want to get it
that's
to.
interesting. This was never planned, but since you spoke about these things, and IL 2020, based on our previous conversation, also I've heard that there are quite a few innovative stuff the league is trying. If any organization which wants to be associated in terms of being a sponsor, what kind of an industry and what type of an organization and what kind of a sponsorship type would be of interest? Case in point example is ILT20, but you can broadly cover it.
Yeah. So actually, we were talking about innovative things. So one of the things that we did as ILT20 is that so when we were designing the trophy, we actually looked at, we were doing that when the craze of NFT was high. So we thought of doing we sort of like had some idea of having the NFT component embedded into the trophy. So that's why if you see the trophy of ILT20, Even though it, like there is a story behind it. It's basically the height of the trophy is an ode to Burj Khalifa. So Burj Khalifa is 830 meters. Our trophy stands at 830 millimeters, right? And it weighs 12.2 kilos because 2nd of December is UAE's second, US National Day, right? Then we had like the shape of it is a falcon because the falcon is the national animal, national bird of UAE, right? And the way the shape was done, we had a centerpiece, right, which is like the logo of the league that's in the center, and we wanted to call it like the incomplete trophy. The idea behind it is that as a fan and as the owner of a team, in no league does the owner of the team actually get any recognition, right? Like even if you are a IPL owner, you win, you don't get to go on the podium, you can't do any of those things, right? So what we did is we put in a secret chamber inside the trophy, which is at the base of the trophy. As the winner, who is the representative representing the winning team goes there, pushes the secret tray out, the crash comes out, right? You place that to complete the trophy as if you're thanking the fan. Wow. And that piece, we wanted to sell it as an NFT. Like you could buy it with the QR code and stuff like that. But it's also physical thing that you could have as part of it, right? But but by the time we actually got the trophy, the NFT craze was over. So even though we are future proof, right, we have not yet gone ahead and done that. Plus we have done like crazy things like that. We're the first league to do belts, yeah. So and the belts are made by the same company that makes the WWE belts, right? It is just their stall, right? Because I still kid around. There was actually a colleague of ours in the office, and the belt is exactly his height. So
it's pretty interesting. The belt one, yeah.
So we have done like a lot of crazy stuff. Even the pendants that we give to the players, right, is very unique because usually in cricket you do medals. We're the only ones who do pendant because the idea is like in North American sports, everyone asks, like you go and ask Shaquille O'Neal, you go and ask Michael Jordan, they say how many rings you have. You don't say how many titles you have. So, our concept is that after some period of time, you go, how many pendants do you have? And even in that pendant, we have a story. The pendant weighs 156 grams, which is the weight of a cricket ball, has 240, diamond pieces in it because 240 balls in a T20 game, right? So we put like a lot of
through,
we put a lot of thought again from an NFT perspective that in the future, this is what your team won or whatever, etc. So everything that we did was from this perspective that we innovate to be future proof for when the NFT craze comes back. Because I feel it will come back, maybe not in the same shape or form that it is today, just like how the ASP model moved to the SaaS model and so on and so forth. So the cycle will come back sometime. So that time we'll be ready.
It's fantastic. Anyway, I think a pleasure having you.
Pleasure
And
talking
it
to
was
you,
a
Venki.
fantastic
It was
discussion.
Thank you.
And thank you for being our very first guest on our podcast.
Thank you for giving me that honor and privilege. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
With this, we wrap our third episode. Please subscribe to our channel.